And I'm going to go ahead and bring up my next guest. Deborah Love Bradshaw is this amazing woman. She can do anything, and I'm fascinated every time I talk to her. She went through her own divorce and shared it in the devotional book, the 3 a.m. book. So she's going to talk about what life is like now. It does get better, we promise. I'll bring her up. Deborah, hi.
Hi.
Thank you
It's
for
good to
joining
be
us.
here today. Well, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to join you.
Wonderful. So you went through a pretty long experience with, the legal battle and the finances, and it kind of must have felt like it was going to last forever, but it didn't.
It didn't. It did last 7 years, and that is a very long time, especially when you keep praying for change and things are not going as you would hope. But I can look back and see each of those moments now and see what God taught me through them. I can look back at what were the trials and tribulations of that period and see how God turned it into a blessing. So even though it seemed like my darkest hours, I can see now how God's used it for my good.
And I can see the strength in who you are and the confidence that you walk into a room like you are, Madam Secretary, right? Like you are about to bring world peace to this room and you're going to tell us how to do it. And I think that can only have come from facing that 7-year trial and making it through stronger.
Nobody really wants to go through a divorce. I certainly didn't. It was not something that I had intended, but I also got to the point where I knew it was no longer safe for me nor my children to be in this relationship. And there did come a culmination when the police officers that arrived at my house did tell me, if you do not get out of this relationship, you will not survive it. And sometimes we keep thinking, well, if I just pray enough, if I just say enough, if I just give in enough, if I just do whatever it takes, then it's going to be okay. But I want you out there in the audience to know that there are times when you need to stop it. There are times when you have to set the boundary and you have to leave. My divorce was really complicated. My case actually went to the Supreme Court. My case was upheld. My ex-husband challenged my protective order in the Supreme Court. We think I'm the first. And so I know what it's like, and I still was praying for him, not always the best things for him, but I did really want him to have a good life, but it wasn't possible to be in a situation. It was a really difficult challenge. So if I had some things that I could share from my experience is, don't forget that God is still there. It may not seem like it. He's not going to always remove you from the situation, but he is going to be beside you as you go through it. And what turned into a desperate financial situation because of a lot of factors actually wound up blessing me in the end, because I was able to stay in the house that I have a son with Down syndrome who's awesome and amazing, 32 years old, and he was on the Times Square Telethon this morning with the National Down Syndrome Association. And so there are so many things that have happened that I couldn't have imagined. But it was really important that we have a stable environment, and God really opened the door through something that looked like a tragedy, through something that looked like a horrible thing. God turned it around for me. And the first thing that I would tell people is allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to grieve what you had hoped would be your future. Allow yourself to grieve the mistakes that you made, as well as the mistakes your partner made. Allow yourself to grieve that life won't be what you had planned when you were younger. But there are other ways to get through this. And the reason I told you the story about the New York Times is one of the things we're discussing is how life can get better. And what better
Wow.
way to experience a wonderful life than to have that wonderful event happen this morning.
I love knowing that today there are actually people who, like you, we had to schedule because this wonderful event is happening. And there are other people we had to pre-record because really terrific things were happening in their lives. And it's such proof that, yes, this dark place where you might find yourself is not the end. Life happens. Now, you talked about letting yourself grieve, though, but you were taking care of a child with Down syndrome. And I absolutely adore your son. He is such a bright light in every room and really a smart kid. But, well, kid, he's 32. When you're 51, everybody's a kid, right? But how does that happen when you're taking care of someone else? How do you make space for yourself?
It's really challenging. And there are a lot of parents, a lot of single moms and single dads who the stress of raising someone who is differently abled or who has other challenges causes divorce. It causes, that wasn't the full situation in my case, but I'm sure that it was one of the factors in the stress. And so one of the really important things that you need to be able to do is to learn coping skills, to be able to have a place where you can go that somebody will listen without judgment. One of the things that I did was I joined a church divorce group. And there are several divorce groups in the city of Tulsa and around the country and around the world. But being able to be in a safe space, it's interesting, we use the Cloud and Townsend book about going through divorce. So I love the Safe People book, as one of the other speakers mentioned, because it is about learning who is a safe person. It is about reframing our thoughts of, what do I really want? It's about learning to deal with our own issues and learning to walk in peace through the process. One of the things that really coping skills and this class taught me was how to recover my peace even in the middle of a difficult situation. And for me, my peace comes from God. Jesus Christ is my only hope. He is the way that I get through every single day. But if you don't have something that you can cling on to, if you don't have something that you can hold on to, it can be really difficult, which is why getting out and talk, whatever your faith is, getting out and talking to other people who have similar situations, who are handling it gracefully, who have coping skills. Some coping skills that I learned to use, were knowing what I could do to change my mood. So for me, I love music. It's dancing, it's listening to upbeat music, it is being able to go out and go for a walk, knowing those things, knowing how to change my breathing pattern, knowing breathing techniques that will remind me to engage my frontal lobe, because so often when we're in this kind of situation, our amygdala becomes on fire. And if we can just breathe, it really begins to calm our nerves. And sometimes I didn't have a moment that I could leave or I could go do something by myself. but I could put on some music and I could breathe. And those were two things that so I learned those little things that brought me pleasure. Having a cup of tea, having a cup of coffee, sitting down and laughing at a comedian online for a minute. Those kinds of things really helped me to go through the process and know that I could survive this.
Wonderful. And when we do those things in the moment, we demonstrate for others that they can do them too, right? We demonstrate coping skills. I love, though, that you mentioned being part of a group, and that's why we're doing this is to form a group study. I've talked to people who say, well, there's nobody at my church who is divorced. We just got a really small church, and there's nobody here who's going through that. Well, somebody in your town is, and what they need is a place where people can love them and be compassionate and be a place that they can deal, get away from their responsibilities for just an hour and actually let out what they're feeling and how hard this week has been, and find hope again that next week, things will continue to move forward, that next year is going to feel different than this year, and they need that space to do that. So just because we don't know anybody right now who's going through it, or we aren't personally going through it, doesn't mean we shouldn't probably consider creating space. I'm glad that your church had the divorce recovery group that you were able to find some space in.
You said two important things. One, to acknowledge what you're going through. So sometimes we don't give ourselves the opportunity to acknowledge, man, I'm feeling really sad today. I'm really stressed today. I need to talk to somebody today. And you may live in a really tiny town and there may not be a support group where you live. But the wonderful thing that happened during the pandemic was we learned to communicate well online. So I don't care where you are, if you're watching this, you have access to resources that can benefit you. There are online divorce groups. There are places to connect. There are places that you can learn coping skills. There are places that you can find hope, even in the darkest moments.
That's true. And, some people say, oh, well, that just doesn't feel comfortable for me. But if there's no alternative, right, if you really don't have any place to go in person, and the alternative is isolation. We've already talked this morning about how isolation can be deadly. So yes, journal, absolutely, be your own best friend, but also connect. And earlier we talked to Kelly, who is a therapist with BetterHelp, which is an online therapy program where you can just, take a walk and go into your app and talk to your counselor. We've talked about, online group possibilities. There are so many ways that you can connect virtually. It is better if you have people who can hug your neck, or give you a supportive arm. That is better. I won't deny that. Go seek that, but don't give up if it's not there, because
everything is uncomfortable until you become familiar with it. Most new things are not comfortable, and so we have to push ourselves outside of our comfort zones. And that's what this whole process is anyways, pushing yourself into a new space.
Yeah, you're finding yourself in a new space anyway, may as well explore it, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I tell you what, Deborah, that was one of the hardest things for me, was nothing felt normal. My brain was just continuously going because it kept trying to find the normal, and the normal was gone, and so I learned to start making lists. Well, what do I want my new normal to look like? I never would have chosen to marry somebody different because I was already married. I never would have chosen to be single because I would had committed. But now that I had these choices to make, okay, let's make lists and figure out what life could look like if I were designing it, and connect with God, and let God show me, because he knew me better than I did, what I would actually enjoy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one other thing that my mother taught me is one of the previous speakers was talking about environments changing, having to move, having to be in a different location. And she
Yeah.
taught me a piece about having a sacred space. It's having a teeny tiny corner, having a beauty spot on the table. She also calls it a beauty spot. Having one, it can be a 2 foot by 2 foot area. Having something that you can concentrate on, have something that is calming, have something that provides you that sense of peace. So when you're stressed out, you can just walk over and look at this area, and it brings, or light a candle there, or something that is your safe space. And it's amazing what one little tiny spot, even if you're living in a hotel, one little tiny spot can do for you.
That reminds me of Carrie's story in the book where she talks about her chair. That is a beautiful thing to end with. Deborah, it's been such a pleasure having you here, and I'm so grateful to know you. Thank you for being part of this.
Thank you for allowing me to be part of it.